So I want to begin my sermon with a confession. I know I'm not Catholic, but we have a little thing called Jewish guilt, so just get used to it. I do think, by the way, of myself as a sensitive person, that I can feel what other people are feeling. It's not an idle assessment. I've actually put a lot of work into reading about other cultures, and I am a voyeur of other faiths. I love going to other sacred communities. And as someone who has both worked in a synagogue and is a budding therapist and finishing my master's, thank God, eventually, in marriage and family therapy, I really strive to meet people where they are. And I want to be present for everybody in all of their experiences. And even though I think I'm sensitive, and even though I work hard at it, as I am editing an anthology for the Reform movement and have this wonderful opportunity to read essays from rabbis who are African American, Asian, and Latinx, I realized that I wasn't as sensitive as I always could have been. It wasn't until I read those essays that I really began to see and understand the inner lives and feel the feelings of what people have felt who both feel inside and outside, who are lonely because they are seen in a group of people but not really seen. And as I have read their words carefully, first as a rabbi and editor and scholar, but more importantly as a person who began to have this depth of caring that I didn't quite expect pop out, I should tell you that most of the essays in this anthology were in fact written by rabbis who are African American, Asian, Latinx, have disabilities of various natures, are LGBTQIA+ identified. And not, by the way, people on the margins who I had to work hard to find. I looked them up in the CCAR directory. And these are people who have given everything to my faith, to this tradition, and still walk into their own community. And I hope that you'll take the time to read this anthology when it comes out next year. But what you'll see is that even for rabbis, they didn't always feel included. And I didn't quite understand fully, because you can't ever really know what it's like to walk in somebody else's shoes until you, lo and behold, take a stroll and heard their voices, did I realize I need even more sensitivity. I'm not saying this to be dramatic. This isn't my all chet moment. I'm not trying to sit here and be like, oh, woe is me. I am saying because this night we are observing Pride Shabbat, a Shabbos that I hope is built upon dignity, human dignity, but more so one that requires us to be present and see the whole human of all who sit in our pews with us. It asks us to recognize, and in the name of radical insistence, that every human being deserves to be seen as a whole. And even me who's trying, I have still missed that mark at times. And the problem, I think, is not cruelty. It's simple, it's fundamental. It's what happens when we as human beings walk into a room. We classify, we label. And it's not even active or deliberate. It's just something we do. And in so labeling and in so classifying, we think we know who that person is. We walk into the room and we sort: gay man, straight woman, black Jew, convert, disabled, elderly. And if you ask Daniel Kahneman, a psychologist, he'll tell you, we do it really fast and almost automatically. And most of the time, we're not even aware that we've done it. And once that label is in place, once again, we think we know something. We think we've seen them, but we haven't. We've reduced them. Not reducing, by the way, I want to push out there. It's our job not to reduce. But I want to challenge us to recognize the label, any of them, we see somebody and say gay man, we are reducing a whole complex human to something. If we label somebody as an African American Jew, once again, we are ignoring who they are, the thread of their Black identity, the thread of their Jewish identity, and we're missing how they interweave together to create this beautiful fabric of who they are. Reducing any person to a label is not a social failure. I would argue very loudly it's a theological one, because our tradition, if we look back into the history, we go back 2,000 years into rabbinic literature, we'll see it says something quite different. It actually encourages not to label. Mishnah Sanhedrin teaches that when God created humanity, God began with one person, Adam. And from that person, all of us came. The Mishnah asks, why one though? Why not two? The rabbis knew that you need two, so they were curious. And the answer is so that no one could ever say, my ancestor is greater than yours. Every human being carries with them, and this is where most Jews will say, and they probably have heard this, an entire world. If you destroy one person, you're destroying a whole world. The B part of the Mishnah continues. In that same chapter, it doesn't stop. It offers an image that I think is important. The human king stamps many coins, all with the same molded image upon them. God stamps every human being with the seal of Adam, and yet no one resembles the other. God could have made us uniform, but God chose instead to make us irreducibly distinct. It's not a footnote, it's the point. The infinite variety of human being is not an accident of creation, it's the intention of creation. And the rabbis have taught more so, even more, that we're supposed to say 100 blessings a day. And I bet you some of you may be challenged to say 5 or 2. We're not judging here. In their creativity, though, toward achieving that goal, they created a blessing for what happens when you see a diverse and distinctive crowd. The blessing found in the Talmud, Masechet Brachot, blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who knows all of our secrets. Why secrets, you may ask? Why would the rabbis choose to end that blessing with the word secret? They explain that just as their faces are not alike, so too are their minds not alike. Just as their faces, they're not alike, neither are their minds. How powerful it is that only God would see and know that inner, diverse, secret universe. And therefore, it's incumbent upon us to recognize that when people are different and they come together, they do so with different points of view, different understandings, different experiences that are secret to us, known to that person, and known to God. Only God can comprehend all of that magnitude, but it's incumbent upon us to acknowledge that. We are commanded to bless differences when we see them. We're not commanded to tolerate it. We're not commanded to accommodate it. We're commanded to engage in a liturgical action. We're encouraged to say a blessing. That is a religious discipline that I embrace wholeheartedly as something that we do, in fact, and this is where spirituality is a practice. You have to train yourself to do that as your default. In a medieval story about Moses passing, Moses, the man who led the people for 40 years, who has seen them at their worst, has seen them at their best, in his final hours he turns to God and he makes a request, not for himself, but for them. Along the same lines, by the way, of the secret that God know our inner blessings, Moses says, may the Lord, God of the spirits of all flesh, appoint a man over the congregation. This Midrash Rabbah, stops at those words. God of spirits? Why? Why God of spirits? Plural. Why not God of spirit? We're like one people here. And the answer, because Moses knew. He knew that the dispositions of each and every person were distinct. He knew that the successor would have to face a people with infinite variety, a variety of different needs, different histories, different ways of both moving and understanding the world. And he prayed not for a strong leader, not for a wise leader or a righteous leader. Rather, he prayed for a leader who could bear and recognize and understand and lead according to everybody's disposition, collectively recognizing them. Not to manage, not to categorize, but to bear, to hold each person in their particularity according to who they are. This is Moses' dying vision of what leadership means. A leader who sees the label before the person has already failed. A leader who labels and shrinks others has failed. He wants people to see the diversity and hold that with compassion and love. And I want to be honest with you about something that our tradition has done. And truthfully, most traditions have since the Middle Ages. Dr. Rachel Adler, a great Jewish feminist theologian, wrote on the subject of diversity in her book. She wrote that Judaism has an extraordinary resource for understanding human complexity. We understand human nature, its narratives, its codes, its prophetic imagination. And then she observed that much Jewish thought came to treat one particular variant of human experience, which she names as male, cisgender, heterosexual experience, as the norm from which all things are measured against. Her question is an important one, because she reminds us that by looking back at our tradition, that's not what our tradition elevated. The Sanhedrin teaches that no two humans emerged from the same mold. Brachot teaches that no two minds are alike. Moses prays for a leader capable of bearing each person according to their own disposition. Have we failed? Did we forget what our tradition holds so dear? The resources that were there, the rabbis preserved them. And yet sometimes, unfortunately, we narrowed our own vision, our own willingness to see the other, and created a norm and called that norm human. And real people sitting even in these pews tonight, were left feeling as if they were a deviation from that norm. That is the flattening that I'm speaking of. And it did not always come from hatred. It came frequently from the same human tendency that lives in all of us, the tendency to label first and stop. And so here's what I'm asking. Not from you specifically, but from us collectively together. I'm asking us to reclaim what Moses knew, to practice the blessing that Brachot commands, to take seriously what Sanhedrin insisted, that every person in this room contains a world. We have not yet finished learning what all of those amazing individual worlds hold. When you look at anyone, ask yourself, am I seeing them? What complexity have I already edited out before this person has even had a chance to show me their magnificence? Have I reduced to a label what deserves to be held and honored? That question is a religious act. It is, I would argue, one of the most Jewish things we could do, because God is not merely Elohei HaRuach, God of the Spirit, singular. God is Elohei HaRuchot, God of the spirits, every distinct and irreducible spirit that has ever drawn breath. The God who knows all our secrets is the God who knows that no two faces are alike, no two minds are alike. The God Moses invokes is the God of the many spirits, not one repeatedly, endlessly, forever alike. God who could have made us uniform chose instead to make us irreducibly distinct. And we are called to be a community that reflects that God. Not because it's politically correct, not because the culture demands it, but because our tradition insists that every person contain a world, and because Moses, dying with one prayer left, asked for a leader who would not put anyone down by failing to see them as a whole. I do not know, by the way, which of the rabbis in the book that I am editing belongs to somebody in this room which rabbi's experience is similar to someone in this room tonight. I do not know which of you have carried that pain quietly year after year, which of you have had to edit out of yourself in order to feel welcome, what complexity you flattened so that you would fit in. But I want you to know, this community is trying to be the kind of place where you don't have to edit, you don't have to flatten, you just have to be. I hope that we can always be for one another. Shabbat Shalom.